And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves.
Birthright citizenship was meant for the babies of slaves. Oh, okay, we're good then, right? We can stay. Ugh, no. Was the black that birthed you a slave? And I don't mean that new age slavery crap you're talking about with us only paying you pennies and minimum wage and not being able to afford things.
Let me make one thing real clear. This ain't about injunctions. This is about erasing the 14th Amendment with a smile.
Well, watch this.
And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves.
So, beyond the fact that a sentence like that should probably never be uttered by the President of the United States, let's talk about the fact that he's essentially arguing here that birthright citizenship should no longer be honored because when it was implemented, with the abolishment of slavery and the addition of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, it was not meant to apply to just anyone and everyone. It was only specifically meant, according to him, for the children of formerly enslaved people.
This man saying that birthright citizenship was put in place for the children of the slaves, what does it make him? I don't even understand why some things are said to kind of like demean black people in America. And I don't understand why these people be throwing things out there to kind of like make black people feel bad. Like, oh, if you were not kids of slaves, you wouldn't be citizens. Or actually, you should be grateful that even slavery happened to you because now y'all are here in the United States. Oh. What does that make, Melania?
Based on what the Supreme Court did today, if anybody is having any conversations around birthright citizenship or citizenship as a whole, if you do not know who this man is, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because it's as a result of Dred Scott that birthright citizenship can exist. Dred Scott was enslaved by a U.S. Army surgeon by the name of Dr. John Emerson. Emerson took Mr. Scott to an area which would be considered between Illinois and Wisconsin, which at the time slavery was illegal. When Emerson died, Dred Scott tried to buy his and his wife's freedom from Emerson's widow, to which she refused. And this man, in the 1800s, sued her. This black man's case went to the Supreme Court in the 1800s. And one of the most infamous quotes that sets the precedence for how we are still treated in this country till this day as black Americans was stated by Chief Justice Robert B. Taney, that black people have no rights that a white man is bound to respect. The Dred Scott ruling of 1857 said that black people were not citizens and that we were not even allowed to sue in federal court, that Congress had no power to ban slavery, which invalidated the Missouri Compromise, and that Mr. Dred Scott had no legal standing, although he was in a state where enslavement was illegal. Dred Scott passed 1 year later, never to have seen the abolishment of slavery in the 13th Amendment, nor the rise of birthright citizenship with the 14th Amendment. So let him be a reminder that citizenship has always been racialized and contested.
So, beyond the fact that a sentence like that should probably never be uttered by the President of the United States, let's talk about the fact that he's essentially arguing here that birthright citizenship should no longer be honored because when it was implemented, with the abolishment of slavery and the addition of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, it was not meant to apply to just anyone and everyone. It was only specifically meant, according to him, for the children of formerly enslaved people. So here's my question then. Are we now going to consider that the Second Amendment only is supposed to apply to muskets? Because when the Second Amendment was established, we had muskets, some cannons. That was basically the strongest weaponry available. But now there are AR-15s and machine gun level pew-pews and things they could have probably never dreamed of when that was originally written. The word choices that he and everyone associated with him regularly make just blow my mind. And at the same time, they cease being surprising at some point. It's just gross to use that kind of verbiage to talk about birthright citizenship. It's jarring, unsettling, disappointing, but just also par for the course for this guy.
Let me make one thing real clear. This ain't about injunctions. This is about erasing the 14th Amendment with a smile. We thought the courts were supposed to be the last line of defense, the place where liberty stands tall even when presidents go rogue. But on Friday, in a 6-3 decision straight down party lines, the Supreme Court told us, nah, we good. They let Trump sneak his foot in the door to cancel birthright citizenship. And they dressed it up in legal jargon about equity and injunctions. Oh, but don't get distracted. The real target was always your rights, especially if you was born with brown skin, immigrant parents, or ancestors who came here in chains rather than visas. For a second, it looked like the lower courts might hold the line, right? 3 federal judges had already slapped Trump's executive orders down with nationwide injunctions, telling him loud and clear, you can't just rewrite the Constitution because you feel like it. Immigrant groups were celebrating. 22 states stood up in court. Even the appellate courts said, let this play out. Then SCOTUS slid in like a repo man in the night. Instead of ruling on whether Trump's executive order was flat out unconstitutional, which it was, they sidestepped it and went for the technical foul. Universal injunctions go too far. God damn it. Basically, the court said that judges can't stop Trump's policies for everyone. Only the people who specifically sued. So now we're playing legal whack-a-mole across 50 states while Trump rushes to implement a policy that directly contradicts 150 years of law. So what's at stake, right? Everything. Let me break this down plain and simple. Trump's executive order says, if your parents weren't here legally, or maybe they were here legally but temporarily, you don't deserve citizenship. Are you serious? The 14th Amendment that was passed after the Civil War to make sure that Black folks were considered full human beings says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. It don't say except for immigrants. It don't say only if your parents had papers. It says all persons. A phrase so fucking inclusive. It slapped the face of Dred Scott and every slave master of the fucking Confederacy. So what Trump is really doing here is rewriting Reconstruction. The very laws meant to undo slavery. And the Supreme Court just handed him the pen. You thought Isengard was bad? You thought Voldemort was a problem? Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Trump's handpicked avatar, penned this majority opinion like it was a legal lullaby. With principles of equity, she says, while politely gutting the power of federal courts to stop executive tyranny. And while they didn't officially cancel birthright citizenship yet, make no mistake, they laid the legal groundwork to allow Trump to do it himself. In the dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she tried to hold the line, calling out how this decision disregards the long history of protection for non-parties. But her voice is now a lonely alarm in a house full of arsonists.
If you call yourself a proud American, please listen now. This is including all the people that don't consider themselves racist, but they are. This also considers everyone that is born here in the United States of America. The Supreme Court has just issued an allowance to end birthright citizenship that was being injunctioned by other court rulings. You know, there was other courts that were like, nope, we're not allowing that. Birthright citizenship is a birthright to be here in America. It doesn't matter where your parents are from. If you're born on this soil, you are American. Well, the Supreme Court, obviously, we all know that they are much more conservative. They have now said that it is okay and that law or that ruling for Trump's administration can start to take effect. Now, if you're a proud American and you go by the Constitution, you go by the laws, then you should be pissed off because slightly and surely we are entering fascism and we are going into an authoritarian and dictatorship state. Please be scared. Please be wary. If you are American and you love the United States, this is against everything that we go for. And keep in mind, in our Constitution, the Founding Fathers did say that if our government is not being ruled by the people or for the people, you can overthrow them.
Slavery supposedly ended a long time ago, right? See, so you're not a slave. Even you admit it. So that means we can deport you up out of this country too. That's why we've been working on deporting people to countries that they weren't born in. You're going to end up back in Africa. But I'm not from Africa. I've never been to Africa before in my entire life. Oh, I can't hear you over that plane that's ready to fly to Africa. Don't worry, once you land on the continent, you'll just become African again. And as soon as your feet touch Africa, all of your instincts will come back and you'll build spears and start hunting animals. It's all starting to come together. The puzzle pieces are there. I mean, you already said that demon, Stephen Miller, the chair, would want a country that doesn't resemble anybody other than white people. See, you're getting it. Now you blacks know that you're going back too. Can you start with the black MAGAs first? I really want to see how they'll react. Deal. I've been waiting to get them up out of here anyways.
So on day one of Donald Trump's presidency, he issued an executive order. If you are born in the United States and one of your parents is not at least a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, you're not a U.S. citizen. 22 states filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump saying this is illegal. A federal judge agreed and issued a nationwide injunction saying this executive order can't go into effect. And Trump appealed, not whether his ban on birthright citizenship is legal or not. He appealed that a federal judge can't make this nationwide injunction while they're litigating this case out. And the Supreme Court decided with Donald Trump. So they haven't ended birthright citizenship. They didn't make a decision on that. What they have said is, if you are a child born in the United States in one of these 22 states that brought a lawsuit, that injunction continues. You will be considered a U.S. citizen. You will get your benefits as a U.S. citizen, whether it's your birth certificate, your social security number, Medicaid, food stamps, whatever you're entitled to. But if you're a child born in the United States, in any of these other 28 states that did not bring a lawsuit, the Republican states, in 30 days from now, you will not get any benefits. You will not get your birth certificate, presumably, nor a social security number, nor Medicaid, nor food stamps. You won't be considered a U.S. citizen, perhaps even deportable. Baby deportable, imagine. The Supreme Court gave 30 days. So that means nothing happens over the next 30 days. So if you happen to be lucky to be born by July 27th, 2025, you're a U.S. citizen. You don't have to worry about anything. But after July 27th, you have to rely on new litigation that's expected. And they're going to make it a class action and make an injunction for each of those particular litigants, every person who's part of this class action, that Trump's ban on birthright citizenship is illegal until a final decision is made by the Supreme Court of the United States.
The Supreme Court doesn't know what it's just done. Today, the Supreme Court ruled to limit the power of lower courts to issue nationwide injunctions. Now, some of you might ask, how was this even brought about? Donald Trump has been signing executive order after executive order after executive order, many of which have come out to be flat out unconstitutional. And lower courts have been issuing nationwide injunctions to put a pause on these executive orders until everything is sorted out in court. Not too long ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order that would effectively end birthright citizenship. There was a nationwide injunction against it because it's flat out unconstitutional. And so Donald Trump took it up to the Supreme Court. And they did not argue about the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. This case was merely about lower courts being able to put pauses on executive orders. So essentially, with the Supreme Court's ruling, Donald Trump can issue this executive order ending birthright citizenship, upend millions of Americans' lives until the Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality of upending birthright citizenship. So to my Republicans who may be jumping for joy over this, I want you to think about something. If a Democrat gets in office and they start signing a bunch of executive orders to flood the courts, as Donald Trump has been doing, and one of those executive orders says all guns in the United States of America must be banned, lower courts cannot put a pause on it. And if the courts are already full with a bunch of cases that may be unconstitutional. It's going to take time for that to get to the Supreme Court, doing damage to the American system and democracy. And so now Donald Trump can implement this executive order to upend birthright citizenship, and for the foreseeable future, until the Supreme Court actually rules on that very key portion, people's lives will be upended. Folks, this is how a dictatorship begins. This is how the great American experiment goes wrong. There will be massive negative implications for the Supreme Court's decision today.